So it's only natural with the evolution of board games where we see things moving in new and exciting directions. And of course, the question is, those type of games, while you might really like the narrative and the mechanics, what about legacy games? What about consumable games? What place do they have? And ultimately, if you're looking to dictate your literally your dollar or trade resources, do you want to get the most replay? Do you want to get the most play out of it? What place would these games have in your collection? And what we're going to explore just as examples, because they're both in my collection. I both really enjoy them for what they do and what they are. Gloomhaven, Gloomy, and Time Stories, which is very polarizing. It's an excellent game, excellent mechanics, excellent production value, but it is literally a consumable game. It is essentially like going to the movies and watching a movie on there. Yes, you could watch that movie again, but it is a completely different perspective. And if we're looking for a board game that we can play again and again and again, should we discount the idea of consumable games? So Legacy is kind of new in that the past, 4, 5, 6 years, we see more of these Legacy games. And the idea is, as you play through the game, permanent alterations are made. Permanent things are upgraded. And this could be an example in Gloomhaven, like literally you're putting stickers over the power of your cards, or you're retiring cards and adding cards. You could go as extreme as to tear them up. We have a world map that we're putting stickers on. I mean, you are literally altering the games. And the first couple of times that I experienced this, my first reaction, of course, was like, well, I don't want to mess up my game. I mean, most alterations to my game involving a wonderful gentleman that I love gaming with, but he's constantly spilling stuff and dropping stuff and like chewing up my games on there. That's the idea of like alteration of games. To do that willingly, like, what? Wow, on it. And if I do that, once the game is altered, it's altered. I have grown to like this over time. If it's implemented really well, like Gloomhaven. If it's a game, so in terms of a legacy game where you're going to alter stuff, this, I think it works best. I think the model works best where it's a long-term commitment game, like Gloomhaven. And I'm not talking about like setup, tear down, meaning you're going to be investing tons and tons and tons of literal hours playing this game. This game is going to be a part of your life. I have sunk lots of hours into Gloomhaven, and I still am, and I love it, and I enjoy it on there. It enhances the experience because the world is literally unfolding as I play. As we play, it's literally something to explore. And with the game being so expansive, I feel like it's building living memories as I go. And those memories might be solo. You might be a part of those memories, playing with my gaming group. You might come in and sit down and play Gloomhaven for a couple of games and help alter the world and help advance the world. You've left your mark. The first example of a legacy game, which wasn't really a legacy game, which I enjoyed, was Dungeon Quest. This was a Games Workshop title from, I think, the 80s, and Fantasy Flight put out some iterations of it in like 2008, 2010-ish. So I don't know if I have the second edition or the third edition, but I have the Fantasy Flight edition. Essentially, you go into a dungeon that's randomly generated by tiles. You have to make it to the Dragon Treasure Hoard in the center, steal what you can, and get out. It's a race game on there. It is totally lethal. It is totally random. You die like crazy on there. You get lost in the dungeon, and just it's absolute madness. It's always shifting. I think people have calculated it's like a kind of a 13 or 14% survival rate, with good tactical play. Some people get extremely frustrated at this game. I love it because I know what it is. Look, we're going to go in and we're going to kind of die. That's just, that's where it is. But with that game, if you make it to the center, Treasure Hoard, and you make it out with a minimum of 2,000 gold pieces in value, you sign the box. You put your name on the box, on the inside of the box on there. And it's really, really interesting because it's altering the game. But when we open that game up and we see those names on there, literally a decade plus, some great friends playing that game that were a part of my life for a long time are still a part of my life now. That's a living history. And that type of kind of opening the game up and seeing that, I feel that with Gloomhaven. I feel that with other legacy games. And I think it works really, really well. You just have to be okay with altering your games on there. So let's switch over to the consumables. This is with Time Stories. And I've pushed up some Time Story videos and podcasts onto my archive. That's under the Board Gaming playlist on my YouTube channel here. Time Stories is really interesting, no spoilers, in that you are time agents going back in time, and you're going to explore and try to work your way through a lavishly illustrated, multi-layer, choose-your-own type adventure on there. And it works great as a team because when you reveal locations and flip the cards, because you are like this time agent, you can't show the other players the cards. You have to kind of communicate what you see. Unless they're in the same location, then everyone can see that. So it has exploration. It has great components, great narrative, great theme. It has cooperation. Literally as a team, you live or die, and it enforces, well, I shouldn't say enforces. It encourages self-discovery with the group in that if you make a wrong decision and you die or you fail the mission, it's Time Stories. You start over on there and you bring along literally your real-time knowledge of what you've learned. The downside is literally once you run through a mission, a time story, you know everything about it. You know everything about it. It's reading a book on there. And yes, there's massive fun in discovering this with your friends real time and being part of a literal living moment. I mean, there have been no other games that have captured this. But at best, it's 3 and done. The first playthrough, you might make it, you might not. Second playthrough, you will make it. And if you made it through on the first, then the second playthrough is going to be like, hey, maybe are there some side quests or side information that I didn't understand or I missed. Third playthrough is going to be, I've played through it at least once or twice now, and now I'm playing it with a new group, and even though I know the story, I'm not going to spoil it for them, I get to play it from the perspective with them, with those new players, seeing their choices, and in my mind getting to critique that and say, well, that's the correct choice or that's not the correct choice. But beyond that, no. And even if you sit and let the story sit for a couple of months, you come back, you've experienced it on there. Now, the counter to this is with really consumable games, how often do you play your games? Like, are you really going to play it and play it and play it and play it and play it? Well, some games, yes. I mean, Runebound 2nd Edition, Runebound 3rd Edition, out of my entire gaming collection, that game, I mean, Dark Souls is catching up, but Runebound 2nd Edition, that game has been a massive part of my life, playing non-stop. I mean, there have been some times when my life has been extremely hectic, extremely busy, everything coming at me from every possible angle, and for months, working on certain projects here, for months, the only time I had was maybe an hour and a half at night before going to bed, and I got to cram everything else into there. So literally my gaming release was Runebound 2nd Edition is set up. I've got 15 minutes to play. It's 1:30 in the morning. I've got 15 minutes to play. Let's make a couple of moves on there. I mean, I opened that game up. There's a lot of history in there. There is a lot of history in there. So yes, something like that, I continue to play. It's replayable. Dumping your financial resources or expending trade resources into a consumable game like Time Stories, you're never going to get that out of it. But the counter to that is Time Stories or mass consumable games, they might not be the main event of your collection, right? Certain board games, based on your personality, based on what you like, they're the main event. These consumable games, maybe not. Now, there's also numerous time story modules being pushed out, being supported on there. So even though they're consumable, you keep on purchasing new modules. And the fan content, the homebrew content of the community is massive, what they're putting out on there. So there's a lot to explore. And even being consumable, if you're a maniac and you're a fanatic and you consume all that content, are you really going to run out of it? Are you really going to run through it? So two very, very interesting places in board gaming right now in terms of legacy and in terms of consumables. Your thoughts on them? What place do they occupy in your board gaming collection? And just out of curiosity, are they kind of a main type of game that you play, or are they more kind of side games?